Live from New York, the show that brings you all the latest sports news.
Cashman tries to outsmart the system. You can't reinvent the game. Read a book.
From the locker room to the headlines, your host, Landon, has you covered.
Judge said on October 8th, the day the Yankees got eliminated, I'd like to run it back, but I'll be back. Listen, when Aaron Judge speaks, the Yankees listen.
This is Landon's Locker Room.
And run it back they did. The big bad Yankees are one step closer to their revenge as they strike back in 2026. The Yankees have signed Cody Bellinger to a 5-year, $162 million deal. What this deal means as the Yankees can finally move forward with building the rest of the roster. Coming up next, I'm Landon Popovic, your host of Landon's Locker Room. Let's get into it, guys. Yankees re-signed Cody Bellinger. Listen, this is the move Yankees fans we're waiting for. I think this is the move all of free agency was kind of stalled over. Maybe you could argue Kyle Tucker signing with the Dodgers kind of planted the seeds for this one. But no, I think this one, for the Yankees at least, was the major move of the offseason. The move kind of holding everything else up. And for Scott Boras, he can now look for deals for his other clients now that Tucker and Bellinger are off the board. So let's break down this deal a little bit. 5 years, $162 million. That's a cornerstone investment for the Yankees. And listen, opt-outs after years 2 and 3 make the Yankees be in a much better position going forward, at least. You know, you have 2 young outfielders in the system. I don't know if you've heard of them, Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez. This gives them the chance to prove themselves within those 2 years that Cody Bellinger is guaranteed under the Yankees. So, full no trade, pretty standard for stars. Not going to dive too much into that aspect of it. But that on-the-field value for Cody Bellinger is a true 5-tool player. He gives versatility, plays multiple positions. The outfield and first base gives you that lineup flexibility over 162 games. May even give you the freedom to trade Ben Rice, whose name has been brought up in the Tyreek Skubal trade talks. Now, do I think the Yankees are going to be the landing spot for Skubal? Absolutely not. No chance. But going back to Bellinger, that defense raises the team's nightly floor. We saw a defense crush the Yankees in the 2024 World Series. Bellinger is a huge step in the right direction in that aspect. And talking about October, his bat was great, and that only matures in time. This isn't reckless spending. This is roster construction. So now, listen, the numbers back this up. When talking about Cody Bellinger in 2025, had an average of 272, home runs, he had 29, an on-base percentage of 813, a wins above replacement of 5.1, and a defensive run saved of 12. Now, if you look at the graphic, all of the ranks there are his ranks among all American League qualified hitters. So Cody Bellinger, great season, definitely for the Yankees. And that's only going to get better as he gets comfortable and finds his role in the Bronx. And the bigger point for Bellinger, I want to say, is consistency. Yes, you could point to earlier in his career where he had struggles. No denying that. Was probably the reason the Dodgers DFA'd him. But he had a resurgence with the Cubs and is continuing that trend with the Yankees. Great move. So, those numbers for Cody Bellinger are undeniably great. But I think the bigger story in all of this is the fact that Brian Cashman outsmarted the evil agent that we all know in Scott Boras. Last year, Scott Boras tried to play games with the Yankees. The Yankees were not buying into it with Juan Soto. They knew Juan Soto's value. Juan Soto had been with the Yankees for a year, and Brian Cashman decided enough was enough to the chagrin of many Yankees fans. Many Yankees fans got very upset with that, but I don't think any Yankees fan is going to be upset with the fact that Brian Cashman waited to sign Cody Bellinger. Listen, the deal structure I already mentioned is absolutely phenomenal from Brian Cashman. Opt-outs plus no trade equals a no-sided commitment. Both sides are really happy that they really don't need to be committed to one another for the rest of Cody Bellinger's career. Listen, I am never the biggest Scott Boras fan. I think Scott Boras is a large reason that MLB is heading towards a lockout, which I'm definitely going to touch on more later on in the show, because it's something that's really aggravated me as a baseball fan is watching the way that teams have recklessly spent money, especially the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Yankees have shown no willingness to do so. Yes, it will upset many fans. People are used to George Steinbrenner throwing around money like there's no tomorrow. But Yankees fans should be happy with this one. They should be happy that Brian Cashman waited. The Yankees didn't chase noise. They did not panic. We've seen the Yankees panic in the past. They lost Robinson Cano, went out there and recklessly spent money on Jacoby Ellsbury. We all knew how that landed up. And that was my fear as the Yankees fan, actually. I was okay with letting Bellinger go when I saw the asking price. $250 million for Cody Bellinger guaranteed over the course of 7 years would have been an absolute disaster for this Yankees team. But the way Brian Cashman structured this deal, the commitment of this deal, is one that is not too large for either side. I can't stress that enough. But one question I have for this Yankees team is really, have they done enough? They've retained Grisham. They now retain Bellinger. And I guess you could throw in the minor retention of Ahmed Rosario. But they've lost a lot of their core bullpen arms in Devin Williams. Whether Yankees fans like him or hate him, he's one of the better arms in this league. But looking at the Yankees all season as a whole, Bellinger, already mentioned, 5 years, 162. Grisham, I think, was a deal that actually set the Yankees back this offseason because they, under no circumstances, gave the qualifying offer to Trent Grisham, thinking that he would accept said offer because it's about $20 million that is tied up to a player that had his career season last year. And let's face it, no one thinks he'll replicate those numbers again. And in the terms of Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, those are very high ceiling guys that the Yankees could have taken a risk on. But I'm going to tell you why I think that maybe free agency isn't the best path for the Yankees this offseason because of not only asking price, but the way this Yankees roster is constructed. So, the way this Yankees team is obviously constructed, they've made some key moves in bringing back Bellinger and Grisham. But as I mentioned, losing Williams and Weaver means there are real innings and real value that need to be replaced on this team. I don't think there's any argument to that from Yankees fans. I really don't. But there are definitely holes on this team, and October is going to find those holes for the Yankees. And we saw it in 24 in the World Series. The Yankees' big hole was defense, and that landed up being the nail in the coffin for that 24 Yankees team. With a good defense, who knows what the Yankees would have been able to do that year. They might have been able to capture the 28th World Championship. But instead, Yankees fans were disappointed with Judge dropping a ball, Jazz Chisholm misplaying a few, and of course, Anthony Volpe has always been a suspect at defense at shortstop. Despite his Gold Glove his rookie year, I think a lot of fans will point to that to defend Volpe's defense, including a lot of people that I know. And it's not a great argument because Yes, Volpe had one good year at defense his rookie year, but since then it has sharply declined. And I think that's a hole for the Yankees. They can explore to fill is shortstop. Corey Seager may be available in Texas. We've seen that Texas is willing to make trades. They traded for Mackenzie Gore a few days ago. They know that their roster is very offense heavy and they're trying to transition. Maybe the Yankees can go out there to Texas and propose, let's give you Cam Schlittler for Corey Seager straight up. I think that's enough to get it done. I don't know if that's a crazy take or anything, but Texas is in financial trouble. And in order to make that roster complete, they might need to make some trades. Obviously, the big names on the market is Tyreek Skubal in the trade market. I saw something earlier this morning that a proposed trade for Tyreek Skubal would cost a lot. But the question still stands, where do the Yankees go from here? I think the Yankees ultimately do go the trade route, but I don't think it's anyone that anyone's been putting out there because of the cost. There is a unfair tax for the Yankees. Um, I've always referred to it as the Yankee tax when in New York, where they are unfairly taxed out of a lot of deals they could have made because they are simply the New York Yankees. But going back to the topic at hand, there are still impact names out there, but this part of the market really is about patience. And I want to stress that to Yankee fans, especially because I feel like after waiting for Cody Bellinger, they don't really want to wait for anyone ever again. Um, but teams are going to wait for the right price, and that's on both sides. That's in regards to the Yankees. That's in regards to any team the Yankees could find a partner in trade wise. They are going to pick the spot that actually solves the need. They're not going to go out there and make a reckless deal like they did a few years ago and trade Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela for an aging Josh Donaldson. It's just something the Yankees are not willing to do anymore because I think they've seen the error in their ways in the past on thinking, oh no, I didn't make a trade at the end of the offseason. Let's just recklessly throw something together. And I think that was my worry with Cody Bellinger, especially that they would do something like that. They would pull the Jacoby Ellsbury route. And if they didn't retain Bellinger, I think we would have seen the Yankees make a reckless move. And it would have been a step in the wrong direction. I think the Yankees have ultimately made steps in the right direction this offseason. Yes, like Aaron Judge said, he wanted to run it back. That's because that 25 Yankees team was a lot closer to being world championship contenders than people give them credit for. They were they were top two in the league in runs scored, top two in run differential, only behind the Los Angeles Dodgers, who, let's face it, have spent an absurd amount of money that no owner in the league, maybe besides Steve Cohen, has shown the willingness to match. I think the Yankees' main issue right now it comes on the pitching side. Obviously, going to have Carlos Rodon and Garrett Cole out the first month. They made a move for Ryan Weathers earlier this offseason with Miami that they hope will be able to fill some of that void. But I think one more pitcher would do a lot of help to this Yankees team, especially given that Garrett Cole is aging, Carlos Rodon is aging, and let's face it, Max Fried is aging as well, despite the fact that we only brought him in last offseason. But despite the starting pitching need, I think that bullpen need is just as big. Sir Anthony Dominguez just signed the other day was one of the only arms that really made sense for this Yankees team going forward. I think the only name left on the free agent market in the reliever standpoint is Michael Kopech. Listen, but when the Yankees make trades, they have shown that they are unwilling to give up those top names. So that's why I point to the fact that this Yankees team is probably not going to go the trade route that people think they will and go after names that we haven't even heard of. Well, let's shift our focus to Indiana, where the Hoosiers have become national champions. The Hoosiers have won the national championship and made college football history. Indiana goes undefeated, 16-0, and wins the first national championship in program history. Fernando Mendoza capped it off with a Heisman season, and the Hoosiers finished the job on the biggest stage due to one of the greatest plays in college football history. Well, a lot of people calling that season a fluke. Don't understand it. Not at all, really. I don't understand it because it was a full season of not only good play, but absolutely phenomenal play. Play we haven't seen in college football pretty much ever. Sorry, had to move my chair there. Yeah, full season, 16-0. No one thought the Hoosiers would be here. And I think that stems back to the fact that they were the most losing team in college football history coming into this season. I hate when people label teams, when people especially, because of their past. A program is not its past. And Kurt Cignetti proved that going to Indiana. Cignetti was able to turn a franchise that was pretty much in the dumpster into national champions in 2 years. So let's flash back to when Cignetti got here to Indiana. Pretty much brings the whole James Madison team with him. And everyone still counted the Hoosiers out. No one thought a pretty much copy and pasted JMU team would make the playoffs, let alone win the college football championship the next year. So the Hoosiers, the first year that Cignetti is there, makes the college playoffs, have double-digit wins, and pretty much opens the door to bring in all of these recruits, including Heisman winner Fernando Mendoza. I think a lot of people are upset that Indiana all of a sudden got all these donors because they weren't a big name program. They weren't Alabama. They weren't Notre Dame. They weren't LSU. They were the Indiana Hoosiers. A title for Coach Cignetti and the Hoosiers not only crowned this team, but it reshaped that program, a program that Fernando Mendoza is very grateful for.
And you're national champions. What's this mean to the brotherhood of Hoosiers that you have joined this year?
It means everything to the brotherhood of Hoosiers, and everybody all week was asking us, what does it mean to the program? And we put our cookie cutter responses. We got to focus on the game, but this is a granddaddy of them all. This meant a ton to us, and to come out on top with such a gritty physical game, it means the world to myself and my brothers. What a special experience.
What a special experience indeed for the Hoosiers. But that response right there, I think pretty much tells everyone everything they need to know about Fernando Mendoza. This guy's a leader. He is a guy who owned every moment of the Hoosiers' 16-0 run. Without Mendoza, where would the Hoosiers realistically be? Definitely wouldn't be national champions. But just as much as Indiana is grateful for Mendoza, Mendoza is grateful for Indiana. And I think it's always been that way. I think Mendoza has always been so grateful for everything that has been given to him because he grew up the way he did. Listen, he grew up outside, pretty much a few blocks away from the Miami Hurricanes and wanted to be a Hurricane, but was told no. He pretty much had one offer from Cal, and he picked that offer, obviously, because who wouldn't want to play football in college? Worked his butt off, lived right next to the training facility, worked pretty much every day at getting where he is, limited every distraction for himself, and he dedicated his life to football. I think that's something a lot of NFL teams love. And Mendoza has been so grateful along this whole journey, and that hasn't stopped. On Good Morning America the other day, Mendoza talked about the potential of him getting drafted. And I think a lot of people are wondering about Fernando Mendoza and his future. So the question being, will Fernando Mendoza be successful in the NFL? Very loaded question. You know, Mendoza projected the number 1 overall pick for this year's draft. Pretty much assumed he's going to go to the Raiders. Saw Tom Brady at the national championship watching his soon-to-be quarterback. And a lot of people are asking if his skill set will translate. And obviously, I think his play on the field has some work to be done. I don't think that's argued very much at all among people that watched Indiana this year. Yeah, he was great. He fit that program really well. So well that they went undefeated and won the national championship. But I think what really comes with Fernando Mendoza are the unteachables. And the unteachables are pretty much what dictates your success in the NFL. Tom Brady, someone who no one thought would ever be Tom Brady, became the greatest quarterback of all time. And Mendoza can easily do the same thing. And I know that's a hot take. I know it is. I know a lot of people are down on his ability to go off script. I think we saw in the final minutes of that national championship game that wasn't the case. Saw that play at the top of this segment where he dives into the end zone. That's a guy that's willing to put everything on the field for his team. And for anyone questioning Mendoza, I think the answer is pretty simple. He's going to be good. He's going to fit any program that wants him, especially with Tom Brady at the helm. But despite Indiana winning the national championship, I haven't been able to get this off of my head that college football is still a very broken system. The problem with college football isn't the amount of teams in the playoffs. It isn't the ranking system. It isn't what everyone points to it as. It's the fact that teams have advantages over others now. I think that's pretty simple. I think before NIL became a thing, before we saw Carson Beck play 9 years, which should never happen. The fact that he graduated 2 years ago, has not been attending class for 2 years, yet is still playing in the biggest game in college football is an absolute disgrace. I don't know how that's even possible. And I think college football should be absolutely ashamed that that is a possibility. Because of NIL, because of all of this money involved in college football, it has made the transfer portal an easy bailout and kind of like an automatic free agency because there is no limits on how many times you can transfer. Yet there are armed forces teams like Navy, who I'm a huge fan of, and they somehow still ended up in the rankings, can't get any transfers. And now the transfer system has become who's the highest bidder, not where the player actually wants to go and a opportunity for said player to better his career. That's what the transfer portal was meant for, and it has become an abused, absolutely broken system. And that's where I start to question Indiana is they got all these transfers. They didn't really build anything, but no, they did. That's not the same issue as all these other teams that pretty much just throw money at players. They were getting 3-star recruits. They weren't getting 5-star recruits. They're getting pretty much middle of the pack guys, players that were doubted their whole career, like Fernando Mendoza, and they proved NIL imbalance might not actually be an issue. And I think that might actually be college football's downfall, because now college football can just ignore the fact that NIL is still a huge issue on its effects, especially with the transfer portal, as I mentioned. And this widening gap between top programs and everyone else, I think, is only going to get bigger instead of smaller, like Indiana, because not every coach is Kurt Signetti. Not every coach is going to be able to go in there and immediately turn a program around. That's really hard to do. And now programs are going to think that's possible. And it might very well lead to the end of college football as we know it. So, talked about college football. A lot of news there. Let's go to the conference championships, where I have made my picks for who will win. This is a segment I like to call Landon's Locks. Landon's Locks, for y'all that don't know, started on my radio show, Empire State of Sports, carrying it over here in the Landon's Locker Room. Just going to be a weekly series where I give my picks. Probably going to be a weekly theme. Like, the theme is the conference championship. So I'm only going to do 2 games this week. I think we'll get a better understanding of the rules as more sports start to cross paths, like the NBA, NHL, and NFL. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to balance that. But this week, we're making it simple. We're just going to throw out my conference championship picks. So, locks time. Simple. The team wins. I win. We'll go to Rams versus Seahawks first. This game is Sunday at 6:30. The NFC Championship, my buddy Nick Wright on First Things First called it the real Super Bowl. Kind of agree. I mean, this is like, to me, it's kind of like a wrestling trilogy. That's how I'm looking at this game. And it's really funny. A team that's played each other multiple times already this season. Take a look at some of that footage. Yeah, so the Rams and Seahawks 1-1 against each other on the season. Turnover has been a huge thing in this game. Obviously, the Rams benefited from it. The Seahawks benefited from it on a 2-point conversion that was a really weird rule caveat. Backwards pass, dropped, deflected off the hands, whatever you want to call it, picked up. That's a 2-point conversion. And Sam Darnold was able to capitalize off of that moment and show up in moments we've never seen Sam Darnold able to perform in. I think with JSN, possibly the best offensive player in the NFL at the Seahawks disposal, with Cooper Kupp, someone you can't count out on, and Rashid Shaheed, who has been huge on special teams for the Seahawks, having 2 unbelievable returns to score. This is going to be a crazy matchup. This matchup is really going to come down to decision making. Who's going to be able to protect the football when it matters most? There is not much that separate the Rams and the Seahawks. And I think this is a game that I struggle picking, a game a lot of people struggle picking, because if you would have asked me a few months ago when the Rams were absolutely dominating the league and pretty much looked like they had no holes, like they were world beaters, I would have said, yeah, the Rams are going to win. Sam Darnold showing up in big games. Never would have thought that was possible. But I think that final game we saw between the Rams and the Seahawks that ultimately decided the division, ultimately decided the 1 seed, is a massive game to point back on because that was a back and forth game. Both teams made mistakes. Both teams showed that they had holes, but Sam Darnold and the Seahawks were able to hold on. Well, a lot of people like the Seahawks defense, saw a lot of those fumble recoveries. They're able to get the job done on defense. That defense has undoubtedly been the best defense in the league. But I can't get over the fact that we have one borderline Hall of Fame quarterback versus Sam Darnold, a guy the Jets didn't even want to be their starter. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around that. It's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that Sam Darnold is possibly a star quarterback. I say possibly because I think this is the make or break moment for Sam Darnold. I think this is the make or break moment for Sam Darnold's career. Sam Darnold has to win this game. This is a must win for Sam Darnold, but it's just as much a must win for Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford's Hall of Fame case might rest on the Rams winning this game. QBs that have won 2 MVPs and made 2 Super Bowls are few and far between. And it would really put Matt Stafford in the conversation of one of the greatest. But let's take a deeper look into the QB battle between Stafford and Darnold. So the question everyone's been asking, Sam Darnold or Matt Stafford? Who's the go-to guy? Who's the guy that's going to get the job done? Who's the guy that's going to get their team to the Super Bowl? Now, for Jets fans, this could be really scary. Because you could have the Patriots and Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl. I know Super Bowls are scary enough for the Jets. Haven't won one since '69. I mean, can't get much scarier than that. But somehow it can for the Jets. Had to throw that Jets joke out there. But back to the argument of Darnold versus Stafford. 1-1 head-to-head. Had 2 amazing games against one another this year. 99.1 to 109.2 rating. 40-48 to 47.07 yards. Yards per game, 238.1 to 276.9. And this is the stat that stands out to me. 25 to 14 TD to interception ratio. This is where I can somewhat get an understanding of Sam Darnold's decision-making process. What that number tells me is Sam Darnold still lets the moment get to him a lot of the time. That Sam Darnold still sees ghosts from time to time. And this is the biggest game in Sam Darnold's career. Big games have been shaky for Darnold, to say the least. It was very surprising to me that he played as well as he did last week against the 49ers. And I think that's what's making this argument so difficult for me. So the question, who's going to win? Who's going to win this Sunday? Who's going to go to the Super Bowl? Who's going to get their defining moment? Is Matt Stafford finally going to get over the hump to becoming a Hall of Famer? Or is Sam Darnold going to be able to tackle the ghost he sees on the field? Or are they going to tackle him? I think that's a really tricky question. I know I keep beating around the bush because I quite honestly don't know who will win this game. I don't like the Rams very much. I love them this game. I'm locking in the Rams. I just don't see a world where Sam Darnold's able to get over his past on the field, able to conquer pretty much the hardest thing for anyone to conquer, which is fear. I don't think I've seen enough from Sam Darnold to tell me that he's able to do that. He's come up short time and time again, and it's just makes it so easy for me to pick the Rams. Well, moving on to the AFC, where the Patriots will take on the Broncos. Patriots, the story no one saw coming this year. Drake May led his team to the AFC Conference Championship. I feel like we've seen this story before with Tom Brady. But some worries for May as he struggled to hold on to the ball against a Broncos defense that caused one or two fumbles last weekend. Can't quite remember, but they have an amazing defense going up against Drake May, who has been anything but secure with the ball. So I think just as much of a problem for Josh Allen last week against that Broncos defense, it's going to be the same story for Drake May this week. That being said, Jarrett Stidham is starting for the Denver Broncos. Jarrett the Javelin, my friends, is starting for the Denver Broncos. Obviously, such an unfortunate situation with Bo Nix going down at the end of that Bills game. I think a reason that makes this game close, even though it definitely shouldn't be, and yet it opens as the largest spread for an AFC home or for a championship home game in NFL history. Patriots are -4.5, if you don't know, as the road team going into Denver. And I think it's easy to pick the Patriots against Jarrett Stidham. I think it's easy to point out that Jarrett Stidham has not done much in his NFL career. For the Patriots to win, they need to dictate the pace. They need to control the clock and, more importantly, control the ball. They need to force Jarrett Stidham into passing situations so he can make the mistakes instead of Drake May on your side. And let's take a look at Stidham's profile. Well, looking at Stidham's profile, I think it tells you all you need to know. Started his career with the Patriots, might play a factor on Sunday for them. I think people forget that Jarrett Stidham had a lot of fans questioning if he would take the reins from Tom Brady and become the next quarterback for Bill Belichick. And that obviously didn't become the case. Jarrett the Javelin, through 20 games, has a 78.3 rating, a completion percentage of 59.4, 1,422 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Those stats really are not pretty at all. They are the bare minimum for a quarterback. Listen, Stidham's had his chances to become a starter. Saw him have a pretty good run with the Raiders. If he's able to replicate that, yeah, the Broncos might win. I think even if he doesn't replicate that, Sean Payton might be able to bring Stidham to the next level. But people are forgetting this is Jarrett Stidham, a guy that has not played in, what is it now, 2-3 years? He's going to be rusty. I think this is really bad future proofing from the Broncos, having Stidham on the roster as a backup QB. Obviously, you never think your QB is going to go down until they go down. But the Giants had 2 backup quarterbacks this year, and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. That would be a better option than Jarrett Stidham. Obviously, Russell Wilson has his past with the Broncos. Not even going to go there and unpack that. But Stidham, definitely not the answer here. It's very easy to point to the fact that Jarrett Stidham could be the outlying factor here for the Broncos on Sunday. And I think that's all it is. It's easy. It's easy to think that the Broncos can take down the Patriots because we've seen backup quarterbacks do it before. And fans seem to fall in love with that. Fans seem to fall in love with the Nick Foleses of the world. They always seem to like the underdog story. And I think that's what's leading a lot of people to picking the Broncos. A lot of respected people picking the Broncos. I very much so disagree with the fact that the Broncos even have a chance on Sunday for the sole reason that Jarrett Stidham is starting. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'm locking in the Patriots. The Patriots have overcome my expectations all season. I did not believe in Drake May at the start of the season. I did not believe that the Patriots, because of their strength of schedule, would be a threat come the postseason. But they've won 2 games. Yes, Drake May has had his problems, 100%. But those problems are not going to outweigh Jarrett Stidham being the starting quarterback on the other side of the field. It's just not a possibility that anyone sees happening. And that's why the Patriots are favored going into Denver. It's something that's never happened, and people are beyond upset that the Patriots are favored as the away team in this conference championship. And to them, I ask, would you really have Jarrett Stidham be the favorite in an AFC conference championship game? And the answer is no. 99 out of 100 times, the answer is no. So there you have it. Landon's locks got the Patriots and the Rams this week. And to that, I say, those are 2 locks for Landon's locker room. We take things to Buffalo, where one play might have ended the tenure of Sean McDermott after 9 years. Well, the Bills lost to the Broncos in a heartbreaker in OT, but this one play has everyone questioning if this was because of the refs. I think a lot of people, Bills fans especially, crying over that one play. One play ended the game. If you don't know, I showed the play at the top, but that play is known as the Calvin Johnson rule. When that happens, the ball is technically live. You don't have control of it. It goes to the defender. It's the defender's ball. It is. Listen, this is a pattern for Buffalo of after, they lose in the playoffs, the blame game starts. And I think blaming the refs has kind of expired for Buffalo, if that makes sense. And so they chose someone else to blame. They blame Sean McDermott. And Josh Allen had something to do with this. 100%. That post-game press conference with him crying was because he knew his head coach was fired and it was his fault, or because he was trying to get the Buffalo front office to listen to him. And I'm going with the latter, because all of this news coming out that he's in the meetings for the interviews, he's deciding pretty much who's getting interviewed. That's not a good look for Buffalo. You just promoted Brandon Beane, who, let's face it, definitely did not deserve a promotion. They took 1 step forward and 2 steps back in this McDermott firing, and a lot of that comes with the fact that Beane is now in charge. But who's really in charge? Is Allen in charge? I don't really know. Because Allen being in these meetings, yes, it's important for your QB to like the coach. It's very important. I can't stress that enough. But it's not a good look. Coaches don't respect that. Players definitely don't respect that, because it gives the crybaby mantra to you. And let's face it, Sean McDermott was a good coach in Buffalo. In 2017, lost in the wild card round. In 2018, he missed the playoffs. In 2019, lost in the wild card round. In 2020, lost in the conference finals. 2021, lost in the divisional round. Up until 2023, they lost in the divisional round, and 2024 lost in the conference championship. And now, most recently, 2025 to 2026, lost the divisional round. I think at first glance, this tenure just looks like one that's full of failure. And I'd say it's fair to come to that conclusion. As a Yankee fan that has watched Aaron Boone for years come up short, I would probably be frustrated in Buffalo too. But I feel like the way things happen, the way McDermott went out, is what seals my opinion on the fact that Josh Allen might have had something to do with this. And listen, I'm not a fan of players getting into the business side of it. I had fun with the intro with Aaron Judge saying, when Aaron Judge speaks, the Yankees listen. And yeah, they kind of did. They're running it back. But I don't like that players are now kind of a silent GM in the NFL. It is ludicrous. It is not going to get you where you think it will. It's not going to get you to a Super Bowl having a player that's on the field that shares the same responsibility as the rest of that roster to win a game should not be having that much input. I'm sorry. I think this is a lot different than Jackson Dart meeting John Harbaugh during the Giants meeting, because when Jackson Dart met Harbaugh, it wasn't like, oh, Jackson Dart's in the meeting as well. It was, oh, you want to meet the QB. Josh Allen being in these meetings is not simply, oh, like, hi, I'm Josh Allen, I'm going to be your next quarterback. It's, who are you? What do I think of you? Let me judge you. And I'm not a fan of that at all. When your coach was consistently competitive, yes, not the last team standing, it raises questions as to why that coach was fired. And I keep going back to that moment with Josh Allen crying in the postgame, because it's very easy to come to one of two conclusions. And I think that we might have figured out why Allen was crying. But let's take a look at that moment first, shall we?
Just get here again and have this happen.
It's extremely difficult. I feel like I let my teammates down tonight. I haven't been doing a lot of talking other than I love my teammates, and I'm extremely sorry. I'm disappointed in how this ended.
Okay. So I want to ask one question off of that. Does that seem like the man that's crying after a loss? Or does that seem like someone with alligator tears that's trying to get his coach fired? I don't think it's either of the two. I think both of those were very extreme, but things I just threw out there in the moment. But I think I lean towards the second option, because Josh Allen keeps bringing up, I love my teammates. I love my teammates. I love my teammates. He never says, I love Sean McDermott. I love my coach. Man, Sean did everything possible for us to get to the Super Bowl again this year, but the roster really wasn't constructed well enough. And that's something we're going to have to work on this offseason. Instead, what he said through his tears was, I disappointed everyone. Woe is me. Feel bad for me. The ref screwed me over again. Wah, wah. same story over and over again. So does Josh Allen share the blame? I think in any franchise, the quarterback is part of the story. But this is not a blame Josh Allen moment. This is Buffalo saying, the window is still open, and the standard is the Super Bowl. When you keep falling short at that same stage, eventually the organization looks at the head coach. Whether it's the right or wrong decision, I think the Bills came to the decision upon themselves, not because of Josh Allen. How much fun it is for me to point at the fact that maybe Josh Allen is undeniable. It's very fun to think that it might have been Josh Allen, but let's face it. Josh Allen did not have the roster. 9 years and the goal is to Super Bowl, and you don't make one, your clock's expired. And firing Sean McDermott is bigger than changing a playbook. It's changing the identity. The next hire has to bring a system that holds up in January, and a culture does not crack when the moment gets heavy. Because Buffalo has the talent. Buffalo has the quarterback. Now they need alignment. Front office took a step with Brandon Beane, whether I agree with it or not. Head coach, same thing. Staff, roster, all pushing the same direction. The Bills open a new stadium next year, and this is the turning point. Get the hire right, and you're right back in the Super Bowl conversation. Get it wrong, and you waste the prime of another franchise quarterback. Let's switch gears to baseball, where the Dodgers have everyone questioning if baseball has a free agency problem. When we take a look at the money the Dodgers have spent since 2024, not so long ago, just 2 off seasons ago, their deferred money adds up to over $1 billion. And this Kyle Tucker 4-year, $240 million deal has everyone screaming lockout. Listen, to me, baseball's off-season format has been broken for years. And I think the Dodgers' deferred money is just the first needle to fall in this. And yeah, everyone's upset. Every baseball fan knows what's going to end up happening because of this. And we've seen the effects of this before. Kyle Tucker signing that 4-year, $240 million deal might have been the nail in the coffin for baseball's hopes at reaching an agreement this offseason. And I think the Mets actually share some sort of blame in this, and it's something I want to touch on. They just signed Bo Bichette as well. When the Mets owner Steve Cohen came in, everyone thought it was a great thing for baseball. Everyone thought an owner that was willing to spend is the best thing that could possibly happen to baseball. I was always on the opposite side of the aisle. I always thought this was the worst thing that could possibly happen for the game I love so much. Because Steve Cohen immediately came in and accelerated the market probably a decade or two. Signed Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander to over $40 million a year, which was a mark that was pretty much held to be the gold standard of contract salary. And now we see people making $70 million. I don't think Shohei Ohtani ever makes $70 million, let alone $1 billion contract, if not for Steve Cohen coming in and taking over the Mets. And the Mets have continued to accelerate the market, especially last year with Juan Soto. Juan Soto's the guy coming into the offseason I think everyone thought would get over $400 million. But when that $700 million mark was reached, had me even scratching my head thinking, is Juan Soto worth that much money? And the answer was always no. But the Mets went out there anyway and did it and probably destroyed their locker room culture because of it, leading to a disappointing offseason for fans. But going back to the Dodgers spending is obviously the clearest example of imbalance that fans react to. If baseball wants urgency, it needs reform. The sport cannot keep turning the all season into a slow motion waiting game. Momentum matters. Football having a 2-week free agency span is something that's great for the sport, and I think baseball can benefit from as well. Stars should move with energy. Fans should feel excitement, not exhaustion, thinking, thank God it's over. Because when your biggest headlines take forever to happen, you lose traction for the game. Baseball had one of the best World Series this past year, but because free agency has moved at a snail's pace, baseball has lost any momentum it had in November. And when fans stop paying attention, it's hard to earn them back. That's why a lockout might be so dangerous for baseball, because if that happens, who knows if the fans will ever return to the ballpark. Baseball is still great. The product delivers. It's taken step forwards in the past few years, whether you want to believe it or not. But the structure around it has to catch up to the moment we're living in. Fix the timeline, fix the incentives, create urgency again. Because a sport this strong should not feel this slow. We sped up the game with a clock on the diamond. Let's speed it up with another one off the field. Well, that's all I have for Landon's Locker Room. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you got something from this show. I'll see you next week, live from New York.